I remember there was only one store, which was the Grange store. It was and it's still there on Front Street. They handled all kinds of merchandise, including men's wearing boots and for mining, everything, and then they handled groceries.
There was the Red and White grocery store, and there was a Stevens grocery store. You know, most everybody walked down to the store every day because a lot of people didn't have a refrigerator, so you couldn't keep much food on hand.
The hardware store down here, Lewis Hardware.
Brady's dry goods, where you bought yardage or essentials.
The businesses on Front Street were very much service-oriented: restaurants, drugstores, soda shops, those kinds of things. But the only real industry as such was Dairy Gold. The largest employer at the time, and still may be, as far as I know, was the Issaquah School District.
Oh, and there was a Cusack shoe store where everybody bought shoes. And he always wanted to fit the kids a size bigger because he wanted us to grow into them. And you might just almost be grown into them by the time they wore out.
This little store, it was the goods corner, and the people by the name of Goods, they had a home, and it's still there, had built this little store, and it was just kind of a round yellow, as I remember it, and they had the store. They had candies and, you know, probably little articles in there, and then they had a service station there. Goods Corner was kind of a hub of, you know, even older people would meet there, and, you know, just like a coffee shop to gossip and everything, know what's going on in the neighborhood.
There was what they called a roadhouse. The one I remember was a tavern, big dance floor.
People would stop and say, "Where is the roadhouse around here?" And, you know, that was kind of, flabbergasted, you know, but I think it got pretty noisy.
I came to Issaquah because a small group of people out here had talked to the Presbytery of Seattle, saying that they were tired of driving to Presbyterian churches elsewhere on the east side, and they thought there should be a Presbyterian church in Issaquah. And I was looking for a place at the time, and they interviewed me and decided to call me as the minister. When I came to Issaquah, I was 30 years old, and as I look back from my perspective now, I think I didn't know much. I just blundered into things. When I arrived, I had 3 young children, and the third had just been born. My first wife died in 1972, and then I remarried and picked up another daughter. I don't think that the church should be focused on itself. I also don't believe that the emphasis of the church should simply be on traditional religious themes. As I read the Bible, Jesus was involved in the lives of people. My concept was that the church is people, not buildings. And it seemed to me that too much money was going into real estate. And I thought the money from the church should go into what we called mission, and that was to go to people who were in need. The people who were here who wanted to have a Presbyterian church had started to meet at Sunny Hill School. And that's where we met when I arrived. But the school was not anxious for us to stay. We had children meeting in classrooms, and they would leave things a little disturbed. And one of the fellows in the church said, "Why don't we go talk to the Sisters of Providence?" I first met Sister Alice St. Hilaire, who was dean of the school. It was a formation school for the Sisters of Providence. All the members of the faculty were on the faculty at Seattle University. I didn't realize initially they were all PhDs. Sister Alice said, "Sure, we'd be glad to have you meet here. You could use our main auditorium, any classrooms you want. And how would it sound if we charged you $15 a Sunday?" So we moved in with the sisters. We began a program in the old Issaquah Theater, which was a movie theater, on Front Street. We worked out with the old man who was running the theater to bring in films on first Tuesday of each month that had substance that could be talked about. And there were films like King of Hearts, Zorba the Greek, and we would have discussions afterward. And about 125 people were showing up, about 75 staying afterward for discussion in the Eagles Hall across the street. Probably the biggest change came in 1971 when Boeing had their major layoff. I think it was 35,000 people who were let go at once. And we began to see some needs there. I was asked to start a food bank in Issaquah, and got people in the church involved. So the first food bank was in a portable classroom at St. Joseph Catholic Church. We also started a clothing bank. And by then we were operating the Issaquah Theater. My office was upstairs, and we put the clothing bank up there too. And somehow I also started a financial aid program, talked to other ministers in the community. They trusted me with a bank account and a checkbook, and got involved in helping people who were really in trouble financially. Now, a lot of this has been brought together now. Just up the street on First Avenue, a building that used to belong to the school district is used for all of this, and it's called Issaquah Valley Community Services. We started a bookstore, and we called it the Forum Bookstore, because we had called the theater program that I mentioned earlier, bringing films to the theater, we'd called that Forum Theater. And there happened to be a very small building across the street, and we rented that, brought in paperbacks from the supplier in Seattle, set up a bookstore. The other thing we did in the bookstore was to turn it into a coffee house on Friday nights. We brought in speakers, Julia's Poem, who had the candy store, spent an evening there, just people just enthralled with his story of escaping from the Germans by skiing over the mountains like the Von Trapp family and The Sound of Music. We brought in a doctor from Renton who was performing abortions before they were legal. Somehow 75 people crowded into this room that was about 20 by 30 to hear him. And we had other less dramatic evenings. We'd have book readings, and it was, again, it brought people together. One of the most surprising and probably the largest thing that the church ever became involved in took place and started in 1976. A member of the congregation had, probably about the age of 40, gotten a degree in molecular biology. And she got a grant from the National Institutes of Health and was working at Fred Hutchinson in Seattle in what was to be really the beginning of serious research in cancer. But she had reached a point where her studies were headed in a different direction than the program there at Fred Hutchinson. So one Sunday she said to me, I think my husband Jack and I might be moving because of this. And I said, Ruth, you can't go. You're charter members of the church. Your program is obviously very important. There's got to be some way that you could stay here and not have to go to a university somewhere else or find a sponsor somewhere. And a week later, she came in with a pamphlet, a booklet. And she said, it says here that a grant could be sponsored by any board of directors with the facilities. And I thought, well, maybe we could do this. So within a few weeks, we had 12 members of the church who became a board of directors. We rented space in one of the Raleigh buildings on Gilman Boulevard, about 2,000 square feet. We had members of the congregation who helped build equipment, tables, animal cages, and people in the congregation volunteered to come in evenings and wash test tubes and so forth. A couple months later, she said, there's a young fellow from Florida who's studying at Florida State University, but he's having to teach classes and then do research. He'd like to just focus on research. And he was studying African sleeping sickness. Well, Ruth liked him from what she had heard. He came up, we liked him, and so he came and we expanded the space. And then there were two others that he wanted to have come. One studied Chagas disease, a disease that kills a lot of people in poorer countries. Well, that expanded and grew. In 1984, the group moved into Seattle, kept expanding, and is now the Seattle Biomedical Research Institute. 65 major researchers, 225 staff members. One of the things that became very evident to me was that the church needed to be involved in what was going on in the world. When the civil rights movement was going on, we were there. We were downtown in Seattle, taking part in demonstrations. I had the privilege of walking with Andrew Young, who was Martin Luther King's right-hand person, and marching with really an interracial group, but mostly black, singing "We Shall Overcome." And there were members of the congregation who were with me taking part in the civil rights movement. When the war in Vietnam came along, there were quite a number of us ministers in the presbytery who were opposed to the war. And I had members of the congregation who felt the same way. who joined me in that protest. I want to say, however, that there were those who disagreed, but we were open about that. And I never, or I tried never to give the impression that everyone should be of one mind. And we discussed that. We had discussion in our worship services. When I preached a sermon, and I would often include things that were going on. I would end the sermon by saying, are there any questions, comments, or rebuttals? Everything we did was in people's homes, all of our study groups, all of our committee meetings, and everyone had gotten to know each other so well. I was there 25 years. I think the community now is doing a lot more than was true in those days.